About 7 years ago, 3 of my friends, let's call them friends A, B, and C, were going to have a sleepover at A's house. We were all between the ages of 14 and 15. A lived with his grandfather. His grandmother had passed away a few months before he was born and had lived a full life as a photographer, but she struggled and eventually died from breast cancer, which then took his mother about 8 years later. His father was out of the picture before she was diagnosed. So that particular night, his grandfather was out of town for a funeral for an old war buddy, and we had the house to ourselves. We stayed up late playing Super Smash Bros. Melee, and we were all crashed at about 2 a.m. on the floor in the living room. Later that night, I woke up freezing cold, which was odd because it had been a fairly warm day. I checked the time. It was 4:30 a.m. I look around and see a red blinking light on the coffee table. I make a mental note about that seeming out of place, but I was too cold, not to mention tired, to get up, so I rolled over and I went back to sleep. The next morning, I wake up to A shaking me violently. I open my eyes, and I can tell by his face that something is wrong. I try to ask him what's going on, but he just points at the coffee table. On the table was his grandmother's last Kodak camera. He tells me that it hasn't been out of his grandmother's drawer since she's been dead. He's only ever looked in there. We try to blow it off. Maybe his grandpa was getting nostalgic because of his war buddy's death reminding him of his wife's death and took it out to remember or something. B, C, and I were pretty satisfied with that, though A still had some doubts. A week goes by and we had all pretty much forgot about that strange morning, except for A, who had been stressing out about it ever since. He decides to go get the camera's pictures developed. He calls us all the next day. I can hear his voice trembling as he begs us to hurry over. When we get there, he throws down the bundle of pictures in front of us. We flip through them, and most of what looked like some last scenic trip his grandmother had taken before she died. When we got to the last 3 pictures, I froze. B and C both gasped. The pictures were of us. All 4 of us, captured in each picture, sleeping on the floor in front of the television. No one else was home that night. The camera had no self-timer. I still haven't been able to explain it, and get freaked out when I think back on it.